everyone, welcome. My name is Paige and I'm at Massachusetts Public Library, and of course we are here tonight for a wonderful panel on publishing. As you can see, we have a great gallery of panelists, and I'll let all of them introduce themselves. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Cooper. He is the Central Oregon Writers Guild president, and he will officially kick us off. Mike, take it away.
All right, thanks Paige, and thanks for organizing this and being in charge of it. I appreciate that. I appreciate everything that the library does for Central Oregon Writers Guild and Central Oregon writers. I'm just going to do a quick screen share of our website just to update everybody on what's going on around town and in the writing world. So I'm going to share right now. And this is our landing page of the Central Oregon Writers Guild website. So here, obviously, is what's going on tonight. We've got Kim Cooper-Findling, Tamara Marnell, Nicole Meier, and Laura Stanfill are going to talk to us about publishing, which I'm pretty interested in right now. I've got about 170 agent submissions floating out there in the world. Well, maybe I've got a few rejections already, but probably about 20 stories floating out there as well too. So any minute now, right? I just want to let everyone know that Kim is going to do a workshop on Saturday, this coming Saturday, 1 to 4, on navigating the world of book publishing. And you can RSVP, sign up for that right here. It's $10 for members, $25 for non-members. It's a hell of a deal for this type of a workshop, and we're able to provide this through grants from Deschutes County. Like I said, I would sign up right now if you're interested in this, because there are only 6 spots left in it. On this side of the page is the stuff that's going on in the world, and we update this every month. So we'll have June events probably in a week or so. Those will get posted up here. But everything that we know of that's going on in Central Oregon, as far as the writing world, are posted on here. This is today. This is the workshop coming up this weekend. There's workshops, there are author readings. Tamara's got a self-publishing class up at COCC here. We have a blank pages writing salon. There's an audiobook class at COCC up here. I have a class on May 22nd, looks like, talking about humor, using humor in your writing. And then June, we have Beth Alvarado and Kelsey Freeman are going to be presenting at our meeting, talking about writing across difference. Kelsey is a finalist for the Colorado Book Award, and I believe she's been nominated for an Oregon Book Award too here. So and Beth already just got an Oregon Book Award last year. So they're going to do a workshop in June as well. So that's a month from now. But here's another workshop that we'll be doing again. I'll put an RSVP on there soon, and that's going to be $10 for members, $25 for non-members. We have Kristen Dorsey in July. We have Jason Graham, Mosley Wada in August. We have a workshop with Dina Chadwell, Sonnets and Villanelles. We have Jamie Houghton is going to talk to us. Jamie does prose and poetry, and she's going to talk about figurative writing. We've got Ellen Santacero, who's in the audience. Hi, Ellen, who's going to do our October meeting. Sarah Sear will do our November meeting. She's going to let me know what she's doing. And my mentor from the OSU MFA program is going to do our November workshop, and he is a fantastic guy, and we'll get more details as we get closer. And then in December, we have our member reading. So that's what's going on in the world of Central Oregon Writers Guild. So tonight we have Mary Krakow is going to introduce our featured reader, and then Julie Swearingen is going to facilitate our publishing panel. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass it off to Mary.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to see everybody today. I am the featured reader coordinator, and I do have somebody reading tonight. I have somebody reading next month, and I have somebody reading in September. So if you are interested in being the featured reader at one of our monthly meetings, please contact me. You can put something in the chat and or contact me at marykrakow@gmail.com. So tonight's reader is Christine Thomas. She has been a journalist for more than 32 years, starting her career in Boston at a weekly newspaper and returning to Oregon to work for several newspapers, including the Oregonian as a freelance writer and the Roseburg News Review, Gresham Outlook, and Our Town newspaper as a staff writer/editor. She has worked as a communications and marketing manager for a nonprofit economic development group and an interim writer and editor for a university. She recently started her own business, K.N. Thomas Communications and Marketing. She loves sharing people's stories. When she's not working, she can be found exploring Central Oregon's hiking trails with her three-legged dog, Callie, kayaking, biking, reading, working on her mystery novel, and spending time with her 2 adult children, her family, and her friends. So Christine Thomas, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to read for us today.
Thank you, Mary. Just so you all know, this is my first time doing this, so I'm a little nervous. So if I talk too fast, which I tend to do, please someone tell me, because yeah, I have a bit of nerves. So this is the first chapter of my mystery novel that I've been working on. Leaning against the cold metal door, Eva rubbed her hands quickly together, then up and down her arms and legs. Cold waves prickled throughout her body. She pressed her ear against the door, hoping she would hear Lauren's 4 taps, but fearing she would first hear his keycard click in the lock. Struggling to stay awake, she counted the carpet's pattern of white, red, black circles the size of basketballs from the door to the main room. There were 24 white, 18 red, and 9 black circles to the end of the hallway, and 9 white, 6 red, and 3 black from the door to the bathroom door. 9 plus 6 plus 3 equals 18. All numbers easily divided by 3. 318, she gasped. Her mother had taught her numbers off in a line to send a message. 318, that's when Lauren had left, promising she would return by 4:30, instructing Eva to sit by the door so she would hear her knock. Eva didn't ask Lauren where she was going, and Lauren hadn't offered any information. Eva had watched Lauren apply a thick layer of foundation on a bruise, then strategically place her curly black hair around her neck. "Do I look okay?" Lauren whispered. "You look tired," Eva replied. "Just go to bed, please." "Can't," Lauren said, zipping up her pullover. "I gotta go." "Why? Better you don't know." "What if Josie and Rachel wake up?" Eva said. The 2 teens were sprawled out in the king-size bed by the window. Lauren looked up from tying her running shoes. "Don't worry about those 2, Lauren said loudly. "See, nothing wakes them up." "What about Marcus?" Eva asked. "What if he shows up?" "Try to lie to him. Look him in the eye and believe what you say. You've gotten better at it," Lauren said. Lying, maybe, Eva thought. Worrying, no. Eva slowly stood, bracing herself against the door, feeling every muscle screaming at her for her nightly workouts. Again, she put her ear to the door. Hearing nothing, she walked straight-legged like a tin soldier to the main room. A breeze caused the wooden blinds to bounce against the windows, adding to the chaotic rhythm of Rachel's snores and Josie's whistles caused by the gap in her 2 front teeth. The digital clock on the nightstand read 4:37. Fuck, Lauren, she thought, where are you? She instinctively reached to her neck, wanting to clutch the small silver cross her mom had given her on her 13th birthday. Marcus had taken it, for safekeeping, he had said. Like he took the Bibles from every room they stayed in, along with the telephone and hotel stationery and pens. Eva asked Josie why he did that, only to have Josie tell Marcus she was asking questions. Again. "Bible's a distraction from the work you are called to do," Marcus told Eva. "Right now, you just need to focus on my words and what I tell you to do." That evening, he taught her Rule 7, ask questions and receive the worst assignments. Marcus didn't teach his rules in chronological order. He dished out consequences after a girl had broke a rule. Being on his team meant keeping your head down, working hard, and being grateful for the opportunity he was providing them. Food, a place to sleep, places to go. A cold prickle of sweat traversed Eva's body, making her feel like she was drowning. Eva zipped up her sweatshirt and pulled up the hood. She limped back to the door, leaned against it, and strained to hear something, anything. She grabbed the pillows and blanket and returned to the bed. She considered waking Josie and Rachel, but knew they would be useless. The hotel had 50 floors. Where they even begin to look? And there wasn't time. Mostly, she didn't wake them because she remembered what they had done to Vanessa, who had paid the price for always being late. Marcus ran his team on a schedule. Last night, he told them he would wake them at 0500 and had to be on the road by 0600 to make an appointment by whatever time in Bend. She could never figure out once it got past the 6s and the 8s. Converted standard time to military time still wasn't easy for her, not like the other girls who knew when he said 1400, he meant 2 p.m. Marcus had told Lauren it was her responsibility to train Eva, and if she were ever late, both she and Eva would face his consequences. Lauren spent 2 days quizzing her at random moments, hitting her when she got the answer wrong, and letting her eat when she got it right. The team captain, Lauren, had a digital watch set to military time and was tasked with keeping the team on time. The last 4 months, Lauren had coached Eva on many things she never knew about, most things she didn't want to know about, but needed to learn to stay on Marcus's good side. Being the oldest at 17 and the longest in the team at 4 years, Lauren taught Eva what she needed to do if she was going to keep her spot. Eva learned on her own what kind of man Marcus was. Like a puppeteer pulling strings, Marcus used words to make the girls work together and words to make them competitive. Depending on his mood, one girl was his queen and 3 were vying to be. He tended to favor the girl who had performed the best that evening, the one with the highest score, rewarding her with new clothes, shoes, and makeup. Most days, Eva hated all 3 girls, especially the girl who's currently Marcus's favorite. Her loyalty to Lauren was purely her need to survive. Please God, just let Lauren get home, Eva whispered. She realized tonight was the first time in a long time she prayed to God, said his name sincerely, not just because it was expected. The last time was when she kneeled on the vinyl pew at the hospital chapel asking for God's help. Not for her, for her mom. God didn't listen. The first time she talked to Marcus on the phone, he had listened and asked questions and wanted to know what she's doing, how she was feeling. When she told him about her mom and what happened and how she had prayed, Marcus quietly explained to her that God hadn't answered her prayers for 1 of 3 reasons. He was too busy attending to other people's more important prayers. He was mad at her for something she had done, or God was just a myth. They'd been eating French fries and drinking chocolate milkshakes after he'd come to one of her home track meets, driven all the way from Salem to see her run the 3,800, told her how proud he was of her coming in second as a freshman in races, how cool it was she was running varsity as a freshman, promised that while she couldn't always count on God, she could count on him. He had promised to be her rock, even buying her new running shoes and clothes, the silver promise ring, and paying for her to attend a race in Seattle. The night before the race, he had lost his wallet and couldn't pay for the hotel or food. Told her they could make some quick money if she got together with a few guys, that it wouldn't mean anything, that it would just prove her love for him, her helping him like he had helped her. 9, that's how many men he sold her to. 9 drunk guys that paid cash for her, cash that Marcus neatly folded into his wallet. After the last guy left, he held her as she sobbed. He had cried too, telling her how hard it was on him and how much he cared about her. But he needed her to help pay for things, the hotel room, gas to Seattle, interest fee for the race, her clothes, and more. Telling her she had to run tomorrow, and after the race, they'd meet her new team members, that she wouldn't be going home, not that she had a home to go to.
Thank you, Christine. That was great.
So thanks.
You bet.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to do this. It's kind of hard to, so thank you.
No, thank you. It was wonderful. Okay, I think Mike's going to take it away now.
Yeah, I'm going to take it away for 1 second and pass it off to Julie. So Julie, it's all you.
All right, well, thank you for that. My name is Julie Swearingen. I'm a book editor here in town and on the board of the Central Oregon Writers Guild. And I'm so excited to welcome the ladies that we have to talk about publishing tonight. And we're just going to kind of get started with them giving introductions, letting us know how they got into the publishing world, kind of what their journey has been. And so in no particular order, let's start with Kim Cooper-Findling.
Thank you, Julie. First of all, it's Findling. Sorry. You are not the first or the last, and it's not a big deal. I've just always it rhymes with kindling. This is my cat. Okay, so let's see. Where do I begin? I started writing professionally 21 years ago. I began as a freelance writer, and I freelanced for about a decade. At the end of that decade, I had my first 2 books at once published, actually, which is also when I began editing. I became a magazine editor. That was 10 years ago now, another 11 or so actually. And today I'm the editor of Ben Magazine and the publisher of Dancing Moon Press, which is an independent book publishing company that my husband and I took over 2.5 years ago. And let's see, my 8th title releases June 8th. Of those books, they've all been published in really different ways. Some traditionally, some self-published, a couple independently. So kind of seen and done a lot in the world of publishing. And I'm just super happy to be here and share what I can.
We're super happy to have you. And we'll plug it, but there will be 2 events, well, one in June and one in July for Kim's books. So let's go ahead and welcome Laura Stanfill. So Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm a forward journalist, and I founded Forest Avenue Press in Portland in 2012, in June 2012. So we're coming up on another year. I publish literary fiction and the occasional memoir. I didn't know what I was doing when I got into publishing. I just knew too many writers who were working really hard to get the attention of New York and not hearing back. And I thought, well, you know, there are other small presses in Oregon and it's a great literary ecosystem here. Maybe I could start a press. And nobody told me not to. So I founded my own press, and we have distribution through Publishers Group West. Distribution may come up later in our conversation, but basically that means that our books are available on the shelves across the country. And we have a sales team that goes out and sells our books into stores. As a writer, I've been working my whole life writing novels. Couple essays hit pretty big this year. One was the #2 most read essay on the rumpus, which was kind of exciting. And I just sold my novel, my debut novel, to Lanternfish Press in Philly. So that's
we might need to talk later about a Zoom event. We'll talk about that for Roundabout Books. And Laura is also involved in the publishing program at Portland State University, and that's how we met. So thank you for telling us more about you. Let's welcome Nicole Meier. She is a local Bend author. So Nicole, tell us more about yourself.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. I was just thinking when Kim Cooper-Findling was talking, I could do a whole hour on how she was instrumental in giving me my start. So like I said, my name is Nicole Meier. I am a multi-published author of commercial women's fiction. I have both published with a hybrid press and a big traditional publisher. I have a literary agent, so I could definitely answer questions on the difference between my hybrid experience and my traditional publishing experience, what it was like to get an agent. And now I actually work as a creativity coach. So I'm helping artists and writers reignite their creative spark and get their work out there and launch their projects. So it's been really fun. And I just love hearing everyone's stories so far. It's really inspiring. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, Nicole, why don't you go ahead and tell us the titles of your last couple books, because they were great.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so my newest one is The Second Chance Supper Club. And then before that, I had The Girl Made of Clay and The House of Bradbury. So the last 2 were under contract from one publisher, and then my debut was with a hybrid press.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Tamara Marnell, who has more experience with self-publishing. So Tamara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Yes, my name is Tamara Marnell. That was pronounced perfectly, although I didn't choose it, my parents did. So I would actually respond to anything that vaguely resembles those letters. So I started writing novels probably when I was in high school, but I started finishing novels when I was in grad school for library science in Bloomington, Indiana. And then I became a systems librarian. And the year after grad school is when I started self-publishing, way too early. My books were not ready. I was not ready, but it was a good experience and I learned a lot. I moved to Bend in 2016 to become a full-time librarian at COCC. And I started teaching self-publishing classes for the continuing education department. So I still do that, though I am no longer a librarian at COCC. I work for the Orbis Cascade Alliance, which is a library consortium that COCC belongs to, of all the major universities and liberal arts colleges in the Pacific Northwest. We share materials so COCC students can request them for free. So I have a book cover design class coming up on Saturday. And we're short a few seats. So if you're interested, please do sign up for that. It does not clash with Kim's event. Kim's event it starts at 1. My class is at 11. So you could go to mine in the morning and then have lunch and then just have a whole like tiny little conference.
That sounds great. Thank you for mentioning that. So I think we're going to start with a question about agents and publishers. So I'm going to address this to Kim and also Laura, but do you have, from a publisher standpoint, like your top 3 tips for when authors are pitching to you or pitching to agents? Let's start with Kim.
Well, I thought about this and I came up with a alliterative response, which is to be confident, concise, and kind. I think confidence, you need to act like you know what you're talking about, which you should because it's your book, and you know it better than anyone. Concise is important too because everyone has limited time. Plus, if you can deliver it, in a concise way, whether that's in an email, a written pitch, or verbally, that is going to be appreciated. And also kind, because really what you're also doing is introducing yourself to someone who is deciding whether or not to work with you. So there's my tips.
Awesome. Laura, what about you?
I love those, Kim. I have 3 that are similar that can work in tandem with Kim's tips. And number 1 is really know your story and how to talk about your story. A lot of the times when we need to describe what we're doing, it's like, well, it's set here, it's about this. And to really get the attention of an editor and an agent, you really need to be able to nail what the story is about and have it be a really strong paragraph description. And you may want to get other writers to read it first. If you start querying and haven't asked other people to read it and you don't get any bites from that query, maybe it's time to revise. Maybe that's when you can pull in some other friends. Writing groups and organizations like this one are so great for that. Because if you can't quite get your story into a paragraph, I know it's really hard, but it's not really going to attract as much attention or get those longer reads, which is really what you're looking for with a query. Number 2, make sure your bio connects. Why is this your book? I find a lot of the time, especially with debut authors, there's panic, right? Thinking about what are my credits, or I have one poem published and I wrote a nonfiction book, and does my poem count? And yes, your poem counts, but sharing who you are as a human being and why this story is yours to tell feels important. And that may include credits, it may include education, it may include hobbies. Many years ago, I knew someone who was working on a mystery, a cozy mystery, and she had done all this research and was an aficionado of old cars. And so that became part of the storyline. And I would have loved to see that in her bio. She didn't just decide, hey, I'm going to learn about cars and write about it. It was coming from a place from her heart. And I feel like when there's so much competition looking for editors or agents' eyes, if we on the other side can tell right away that this is the story of your heart and this is how it connects to your passions, and that or your living reality, if it's an own voices story, that's really important. And then my third thing is what I like to call rejection resilience. We all need to practice rejection resilience, don't we? My 9-year-old is actually the best at it of anybody I've ever met. She gets rejected and moves on. It's like the next thing. It's really hard when you put your beautiful, powerful work on the page for someone else to judge. And it's hard to not see a rejection as really personal. And so rejection resilience is where you get like, okay, you can say, okay, I got a rejection, but I still matter. My story still matters. And move on, submit again, or have some friends read the query letter. Do something forward moving for your career when you get a rejection, instead of feeling like somebody stabbed you in the heart, because we're all human beings. We are all on the other side of the desk, people with specific tastes, specific lived experiences. I've rejected books that were too close to my lived experience because they were trauma triggering for me. I rejected books that I just didn't get because of my personal experience. And I've rejected a lot of great books that just weren't what I was looking for at the time. So when you get those rejections piling up, think, okay, I'm out there, I'm doing it, whether it's submitting a short story to a magazine or submitting a full-length manuscript. Remember, okay, this is good. I'm doing my work. I got a rejection. Good for me. Maybe you want to even create a little traditional ceremony for yourself, or maybe you decide every time I get a rejection, I'm going to write a letter to a friend or send a card in the mail, something that lifts your spirits and recenters you on the joy of living. So those are my 3.
I have authors that reached out to me after or editing. And the thing about rejections you have to remember too is if they take the time to let you know, thank you for submitting, but this isn't for us, because a lot of times you're just never going to hear from them. And that I know is even worse. The lack of an answer can be very hard on authors. Nicole, let's talk about your experience, since you do have a literary agent, and maybe kind of what that was like to get to that point. You know, did you pitch to them? Did they come to you? Kind of what your experience was?
Yeah, and I love what Laura was saying. I wanted to share a story with everybody out there that I once got a rejection that just said the word no, signed intern number 1. So everybody gets rejected. I think that was probably the worst. I mean, I just had to laugh. It was the worst kind of rejection I could possibly get. So my experience is a lot like so many emerging writers. First of all, the publishing world moves slower than we would probably love for it to move. And this includes agents and editors and everybody involved. So it takes time. So my first manuscript I wrote, and it lives in a drawer, it's not published, but I pitched to a few agents and it was crickets. And no feedback is feedback, right? So if you're not getting a request for a full manuscript, that means that you're not there yet. But thankfully, one agent wrote me back, and she didn't take me on, but she wrote me back and she took the time to say chapter by chapter why this book wasn't working. And I still connect with that agent to this day. She didn't take me on, but I'm forever grateful. So I wrote a new manuscript. I waited 9 months. So for anyone who's never pitched before, you can pitch, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then they'll finally say, send us 3 pages, send us a few chapters, send us a full manuscript. This can go on for years. If you're lucky, it doesn't, but it's typical for it to take a long time. I wound up getting impatient, so I hired an editor and polished my manuscript to the best of my ability and wound up hooking up with a hybrid press. Luckily, I got some nice publicity when that book published, and because of the publicity, and the distribution was pretty decent, I had a couple literary agents knocking on my door and asking me if I was curious if they could represent me. And I sort of vetted them and realized one of them I really connected with, and I signed with her. So it's the same when you're pitching. I can say this, I have 3 books out there. It's the same when you're pitching publishers. They're not interested until someone else is interested in you first, and then they're really excited to read your stuff. Same with agents. When you hear crickets and all of a sudden you get an offer, you tell all the other agents like, hey, someone's interested in me, and man, then they all want to read your work. It's just this very strange cycle, but you know, it's like when you're dating and no one asks you out, and then someone asks you out and they're all asking you out at the same time. You know, it's like feast or famine. So I hope that answers your question, but that was my path.
That's great. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure, Tamara, if you have any experience with agents, since you mostly focus on self-publishing, but I have to imagine that sometimes that's why you get self-publishing interest, is that people don't want to take the time to wait for agents to get back to them. Do you have any experience with that?
Well, people self-publish for many reasons, and impatience is not a very good reason to do it, because you need a lot of patience just to take that work on yourself and do it. It's not like traditional publishing can take years, like years to get an agent. Even if you do land an agent, and then months to submit to editors, and then you finally get a deal, it's still going to be 3 years down the line, right? Because you're slated for some quarter in 2025, and there's a lot of work ahead of you. So it's in self-publishing, it only takes a couple of months usually, but it's still a lot of work, and you have to be patient about it because you're taking on the full-time job of a whole team of people onto yourself. I have reached the stage of getting some offers from agents, but we didn't click. I had written a cozy mystery a couple years ago, and I did it for the wrong reasons. I did it because I was tired of not making any money or sales from my books, and I thought I'll write something that I know will sell. And I did get bites, and agents did say this will sell, but you have to do this, this, and this to make it more commercial. And that I realized my passion wasn't in it. So no matter what path you take to publication, you have to be really invested in it. I think whether you're going to do traditional, you have to go in thinking, I'm doing this, I'm willing to compromise. If they tell me to make changes, I'm going to make the changes. I'm going to make this work. If you self-publish, you have to really believe in it enough to actually get to the finish line and then continuously market yourself. So it's not like one side is easier than the other. One might be technically faster, but you need perseverance either way.
Definitely. So let's kind of talk about, some of the advantages and disadvantages of self-publishing versus traditional. And I want to ask Kim this specifically because you have self-published and traditionally published, and you all are also a publisher. So kind of what's your experience of them and how different they are or similar?
I think that, I guess if we just come at it from a pros and cons perspective, I think that the pros to traditional publishing are distribution, a little bit more credibility, perhaps a little more connection to New York, etc. Perhaps you get some marketing assistance, PR, that varies, right? Mm-hmm. The cons are lack of control. You usually don't get to choose your cover or, even perhaps some of the editing decisions. Even, in my position with nonfiction, they may even want to control the outline, all of that. Pros and cons. I mean, it depends on what you want and what kind of circumstances you like to create under. So then you just reverse that, you think about self-publishing, you can control everything. You can control the typesetting and what font you like, and, pretty much everything you can be involved in. The very first book that I self-published was my Bend Daycations book. And the reason that I self-published that, there were several. One was impatience. I mean, I didn't want to try, it was a niche book that I didn't want to try to pitch to a larger market because I didn't want to take the time. I mean, Bend was hot. This is exactly my niche. I've been travel writing and living here for all of this time. So impatience was a reason, but a bigger reason to me with that book was that I wanted to use my own voice. And it's not a guidebook. It's really kind of a hybrid memoir, narrative, nonfiction travel guidebook. And I felt that it would be really hard to place that with a different press. You know, but I also felt really strongly that it would work. And it does work. It's my best-selling book. And I mean, that's one of the things now that I'm a publisher that I really like to take on and nurture are projects that kind of they don't fall into one genre. You know, they're a little bit out of the box. They're harder to pigeonhole into one category, you know, that might fit better with a publishing company. So I'm particularly fond of nonfiction medleys, you know, some memoir mixed in with nonfiction. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned distribution, and I know Laura mentioned that when she was talking about her experience. So Laura, kind of tell us, you know, it as succinctly, I guess, as you can, because the distribution model is crazy. You know, what pro is there for that when it comes to distribution, like, you know, bookstores, etc. Kind of let us know what that is.
Well, as an author, I went looking for a small press with distribution because, well, I have a lot of connections at bookstores. I'd much rather someone else be selling my work into the store. And it really does make a difference. A lot of small presses do not have distribution, or they say they're distributed by Ingram. So if you're really interested in looking for a small press that fits, number one, what Kim said about a niche, look for what their niche is or what oddball side pieces they seem to do really well at, and look for the ones that might match your work. And then look and see who distributes the press. Some people, a lot of presses do print on demand because it's inexpensive, and it's very similar to self-publishing. A lot of self-publishing is print on demand, right, Tamara? So for me, I lucked into signing with PGW. I'm probably their smallest press. I'm very small compared to the rest of them. They think I'm cute because I come in and I pitch one title and everyone else is pitching 30 titles for their fall list. I'm like, here's my book. But as it turns out, you know, my authors get a sales team that in non-COVID times, my sales reps actually drive around to the bookstores and they do really quick pitches. And that's back to knowing what your story is about. As publisher and editor, I need to figure out how to get language right for the distribution team so they can go in and pitch the next book and pitch the next book. And that little bit of time they give for my book works out. So with distribution, there are just a lot of bits and pieces. But basically it means bigger availability. And I feel like a lot of authors, their dream is to get their books into independent bookstores. Indies are great. If you self-publish or if you go with a press that doesn't have distribution, find out what your local store does for consigning or what their policy is, because you can probably get into your local store, a couple local stores, and that's a nice way around the system of having a press with distribution.
Yeah, we had a lot of issues with that when I worked at the Barnes & Noble here in Bend, because we couldn't even get local people's books. And it's great at Roundabout that we can. There are pros and cons of consignment, of course. So Tamara, let's kind of talk about the distribution that comes with self-publishing. You know, what I feel like sometimes that might be a con. So what's your experience when, you know, explaining to people what it means when you're self-publishing? How do you get your book out there?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of thoughts rattling around. Both Kim's and Laura's thoughts were excellent. On the matter of the pros of publishing, self-publishing, you get full control artistically, and you're not beholden to the capitalist business model of I have to make something that makes money. But Laura was also spot on that self-publishing, you run into severe problems with distribution. So first of all, print on demand is literally on demand. Somebody orders one copy, that one is printed from a special machine. It's basically a laser printer. You're not doing a print run of thousands of books with the offset printing machines where you have the plates and they're spinning and churning out thousands of pages and they make blocks, because you have to warehouse those. And so print on demand is not returnable. When you order something like from Lulu Press, for example, if it's a self-publisher, you get that one copy, it's not returnable. Bookstores rely on things being returnable because they don't have tons and tons of money. They can just throw on things that aren't going to sell and then, oh, I guess no one wants this, goodbye. So as a self-publisher, it's really hard to get things in stores if you're using a print-on-demand service. If you do use an offset printing service like Ngram Spark, that's when they're distributed by Ngram, it often means they're using Ngram Spark, which does allow placement in bookstores, or Book Baby up in Portland. They also have some agreements to get their books in Powell's and things. When you agree to distribute your books into bookstores as a self-publisher, and then they buy those books, and then you get your check and you're so happy, don't spend it on anything, because if you allowed returns, that cost is on you. Ngram is not going to eat that cost. So if nobody bought that book, it gets returned, you have to take that on yourself. So make sure you keep it somewhere safe for a while, That's one con of being a self-publisher in general, is you have to take on the risk yourself, the work yourself, the job of finding contractors. If you need to hire out an editor or a book designer, an interior designer, a publicist, those costs really add up. So it can be a huge investment. Or if your goal is it's quite small, it's a great option if you just want to get your work out there. You want to share it with your friends and family. You're not looking to make $1 million. Don't listen to the bloggers who are like, well, just do self-publishing and then you'll be the next Hugh Howey in 10 minutes. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. So Nicole, you are traditionally published, but when you were first writing, did you consider self-publishing?
I did not. I think things are so different now. So my first book came out in 2015, and I feel like authors have so many options and choices now. And I love that there are companies out there that actually will sort of partner with you and walk hand in hand with you while you self-publish, which that wasn't around when I was looking. So I think there's some amazing options, but no, I didn't. But what I did want to say, and this kind of is going on a tangent off your question, but I tell everybody that wants to become an author, I say, look, whether it was a hybrid publisher or my big traditional publisher, every time I launch a book, it is launching a small business. Mm-hmm. There are so many things I am responsible for. And just because I have a contract and I'm getting an advance, they're not doing a lot of the work and I have to do it. So it kind of goes hand in hand with anything you're doing. I think all authors are expected to do a lot of work these days that they didn't used to have to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing and publicity that the authors now take on themselves. I get a lot of those emails at the bookstore. So that kind of leads me into what I think might be a pretty large conversation, but over the years, they've been called vanity presses. Now, sometimes we hear them called boutique presses. What is your experience? We can start with Laura if you have some, but do you how can you tell from a website or from interactions with someone where they might be that press that will publish your book and then push you out of the nest and doesn't help you or doesn't, or charges you a lot, kind of that predatory model that we've seen before. Do you have anything that, you know, you keep an eye out?
I don't know that area too much, but I always encourage writers to really research deeply before they submit anywhere, especially if it's a hybrid. You want to know what their distribution plan is. Some hybrids I think do print offset, others don't. I don't know how many do, but I know there's at least one hybrid I know of that has distribution and does offset. And I would say covers. I mean, we all know when we go into a bookstore and we look at covers, or we're online and we see a cover this size, if it doesn't attract our attention or if it looks not great, we probably aren't going to buy the book unless it's by a friend. And then the friend's probably heartbroken that their cover isn't that great, or if it's traditional, or they didn't quite get what they expected, but here it is anyway. So yeah, looking at covers and looking at what the other authors are saying about the presses. I don't know if it's still running or not, but Predators and Editors has been a good site for a long time. Does anyone know if they're still adding to it?
I don't, but I'm gonna have to Google it right after this.
Yeah, it's for a long time it was functioning as a database for scam presses. There have been times, I mean, I teach about, well, pre-COVID, I was teaching about once a month to writers, a lot of writing groups like this. And there were times when somebody would come in. There was one in particular on the coast who said, I spent $10,000 on this company and they promised me a movie deal and they promised me all this stuff. Well, I don't think he'd even written the book and he paid all this money out and nothing ever happened, of course. So I do think that one of the many benefits of social media is that all the writers are talking to each other. There are a lot of small presses that go down in flames, not all the time, but if you follow on Twitter Selfpublishing, you'll see that eventually people start coming out and talking to each other about how they haven't been getting royalties and they've owed royalties for 3 years or 5 years. And those presses, eventually the authors start talking to each other and then it gets really big on social media and then but if you're looking for presses right now, a vanity press or boutique press comes up, it helps to see what everybody else is doing on that press, and definitely to look on Twitter or whatever your social media feeds are, and Predators and Editors.
Awesome. And Nicole put something in the comments, Alliance of Independent Authors offers vetting. So that's great. Kim, do you have any experience with that, what we would call a vanity press?
I don't have personal experience with that. I mean, I've heard all the stories that everyone has. I think I guess I would just say, do you have an actual human being available to you? Do you have someone who gets on the phone with you, at least in the beginning, like a free hour consult, someone who actually seems interested in your project and making it better and engaging with you as a person, and then, I mean, I think, yeah, Google is our friend. There's so much information out there. And then also just get a really clear contract. What are you buying, and make sure it's in a written contract.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Tamara, I feel like you might have some insight into this, working with people who want to self-publish, but then they, get online and maybe find that vanity press.
Oh yeah, I have thoughts, not just as a writer myself and a self-publishing teacher, but as a librarian. So information literacy time, whenever you're verifying anything, do not look at just that one source. You're looking at that one Author Solutions website. They're based in Bloomington, Indiana, where I went to college, so they're infamous. You're looking at their website, you're seeing their sales, you're trying to figure it out if they're legit or not. You're not going to find that answer right there. Research laterally, not just, down. Go out, look at other sources. Nobody who has run a scam could completely get away with it without, leaving traces somewhere. They've made somebody mad. People spend a lot of money on these things and then they don't get what they paid for. They're going to complain about it somewhere. I think Predators and Editors itself was shut down, but I'm sure there's a lot of other places. Author Solutions in particular, on their Wikipedia page, even. Just reading the details, they'll see that there were lawsuits in the early 2010s from writers groups, and they get a thumbs down from the science fiction writers groups. So you can sometimes get a gut feeling when looking at something, like, you know, this doesn't look to be on the up and up, but listening to other people is really key. And there are so many writers gathering holes on the internet now. Query Tracker is one place where if you want feedback on that query that you're not getting any bites on, you can post it there, but there's also publishing chatter going on. Even in the fan fiction type places, the Wattpad type places, there's forums everywhere where there are all these writers who are trying to accomplish the same thing of getting their work out there. So they've had some experience and they've heard things.
Yeah, and I think Laura's point too, and to yours, is the sales channels really matter, because when people are looking at vanity presses, they're probably thinking, oh, they can help me get my book out. And so you need to know, you know, how they're doing that. So let's kind of open it up to questions from our attendees. Feel free to pop them in the chat. And I just kind of want to say to our panelists, if you have other thoughts about self-publishing, traditional, etc., you know, I open it up to you. Let's have more discussion. Let's see here. Well, Lynette did have a question, but I think it's just clarifying. So when it comes to contracts, etc., but, you know, keep everything in writing, and, you know, keep the emails that you get from someone that says something, but then maybe it doesn't match the contract, etc. Let's see if we've got any questions. Sorry, my mouse isn't working. Let's see here. Well, how about this? Until we hear some questions, let's do a little plug for the books that each of you kind of maybe have coming out right now. I know, Laura, you said you have a book that just got picked up. Do you know your pub date yet?
Spring 2022.
And doesn't that feel both so far away, and yet it's really not? I mean, it's going to get here very quickly.
I work really slow because I have 2 kids and I'm a writer and on my publishing. So I like 2 years for my authors. And a lot of that is teaching my authors what they need to do and understand to go from having their work live inside their computers and dealing with what can feel like a barrage of reviews or responses. And so we do a lot of like therapy basically for the 2 years. So I feel like I can skip that part. I told my publicist I'll need a little hand holding, but I know how it all works. And so I'm ready to go. So I feel like we can do it in a year. However, I don't have my developmental edits yet. And they were supposed to come like a week ago. Or 2 weeks ago. And now they're next week. And until I get my developmental edits, I really don't know what my editor thinks of the book. I mean, she loves it. She bought it. But I was asked to come up with alternative titles, and I don't know if it's because she wants an alternative title for sure, or just that's the exercise they put the authors through. So I do not have control, but it's okay. It's
awesome. We did get some questions, but Kim, real quick, let's tell everybody about your 2 books that are coming up.
Okay, first I just wanted to say Laura is a friend of mine, actually. Hi, Laura. And I want to do 2 years of therapy with Laura. That's where I'm going to be for the next 2 years. Okay, so let's see. I was the editor and reviser of Oregon Off the Beaten Path, which is a title that's been around in Oregon for a long time. This was the 12th edition, and Myrna, who was the author, retired, and the press gave me the book, which I was delighted and honored to revise. That's coming out June 1. And then Bad Mommy, Bad Writer, Writing from Home While Keeping the Kids Alive is a memoir that's coming out June 8th. So yeah, that's what I got.
We're very excited about your events too. Nicole, do you have anything coming out soon?
I don't. I'm so busy with my coaching business that I'm just helping other writers right now.
Awesome. That's great. Tamara, what about you?
No, ask in about 5 years, maybe.
We'll do this again in 5 years and see how everything's going. Okay, so one of our first questions is, and anyone, you can raise your hand if you have an answer for this, but how important is it to have a lawyer review a publishing contract? Did you have one, Nicole? Did you have a lawyer review it before you signed?
I did not. I had my husband. He's really analytical. I mean, man, is he analytical. So he was really helpful. I do think if you're going to go with someone that you don't have references for, that you don't know fellow authors under that press, you need to have someone look at it. I actually knew a handful of authors that were with the press I went through. And then for my literary agent contract, that was really boilerplate. And then my publisher contract, my agent reviewed for me because she was more savvy than I was. But that's where I just want to mention too, it's so important for an author to have a team, because there's too many elements that you need, like a lawyer or someone to bounce ideas off of, or another author, or a street team, or critique group, whatever. Get that team in place, because when you needed it yesterday. So start now wherever you are in the process.
Absolutely. Laura, did you have a lawyer review the contract for your upcoming book?
No, I actually do that for other authors on freelance basis, so I didn't need an attorney. I put a link for everyone. The Authors Guild does that. So often I have an author who goes through the Authors Guild and comes back, and the Authors Guild is it's great. And from a publisher point of view, they really want the authors to retain everything. So I think if you do go through the Authors Guild, you really want to talk to your publisher or editor, especially if it's a small press, and see, okay, like, are you asking for foreign rights just to have them? Or are you asking for foreign rights because you have an agent who's going to go sell the foreign rights? And then make a decision based on what the Authors Guild says, because they seem to be really tamped down on everything. And I've had more conversations with my authors about, like, it's totally up to you, but if you do want it, I do have a foreign rights agent. If you don't have your own agent who's going to go out and sell the book, mine could, So, but that's been really great for a lot of people. And I think at the very least, have contract savvy friends read it. I mean, that's not legal advice, but if you have author friends who have signed their contracts, they know what they wish they had known when they signed the contract, right? Like any of us who've signed contracts would know, you really had better figure out what this wording is and ask a question here, even if we don't know what to ask for.
Yeah. Kim, I'm going to send this question to you. What about submitting to agents and publishers simultaneously?
Oh, that one. Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the agent and publisher, and often it'll say what they prefer, but I think that it's common to send multiple simultaneous submissions. I think that also because the publishing industry is so glacial, that's common practice. And the ethical thing to do is if you connect with someone and sign a contract, then you let the others know that you're off the market.
Yeah. And this is where it's good to keep track of everything too. I've known author friends who keep a spreadsheet, of who they submitted to, when, what their guidelines were. If you don't hear back from us in 3 months, then unfortunately it's probably a no. If and that's a lot. There's a lot of legwork when you're looking into what their submission guidelines are. Yeah. So we have a question from someone who is writing a memoir. And since I know that Kim and Laura have some experience with this, how do you know whether to reach out to a commercial publisher or an academic press? Laura, do you have insights on this?
Sure. It's something that I have, after a lot of years of reading. I do better with fiction, but I sort of have established a sense of it myself, and I feel like you could too. And here's how I would suggest you try. read widely. First of all, look up online your subject, your topic, what your main themes are, those keywords on a major book platform or just online, and see what's out there, and then see who has published those books. There are a lot of, it's so individual making this decision on which way you want to go or what you think is best. I'm looking right now at what looks like a great novel, but it's really too commercial for my taste. And so I would encourage her to go look for an agent or look for a press that does more commercial work than what I do. I think I guess it's really a matter of you doing the research, I guess, is my best answer. I wish I could fix it and tell you. But I think if you look and see what other books like yours are out there and get a sense for, who's on. I saw an author recently was on the Today Show, and it's like, okay, what did that author write about in that memoir? Oh, I know. I was reading this person, Carol, her book came out from Abrams, and she just had an article in Today. That's what I was thinking of. And her book is about the death of her son, and told through the lens of these 7 stories she reported while she was at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, which tells me that she knows the market and she knows good writing and she has connections. And so she's been getting really big placements for her book. And that doesn't mean that someone else who's written the same type of story would also get on the Today Show. So keep that in mind too.
I think one of the unfortunate drawbacks with a university press, and Laura and I have experienced this through PSU with Ooligan Press, is they don't publish a lot during the year. With Ooligan, there's, I think, 4 titles a year, which is actually, that's good, but you have to think if you pitch to a university press, you might not get published for 2 or 3 years because, they've set that timeline up as well. So we do have a question about, because you mentioned it, Laura, and I have thoughts on this too, but what are developmental edits? So why don't you go ahead and tell us, since you were teaching book editing.
All right. Developmental edits are the big picture edits. Often when we think about getting a book edited, if we're not a writer, we think of like line editing. A lot of people go straight to line editing or copy editing even, but developmental edits are my favorite. And that's when a manuscript comes to me and I love the story, I love the characters, but the pacing's off a little bit here, and I don't think that this character pays off enough in the 3rd section, and I want to work with the author on really just shoring up the entire manuscript. So that's what a developmental edit is. It's really like the global picture.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually what I specialize in as an editor. But from an author's point of view, Nicole, let's talk with you about this one. How did it feel getting those developmental edits back?
Yeah, so with the traditional publisher, I was assigned a developmental editor. And this is something that you lose if you go with, the bigger you go, the less control. We've already established that, but you're assigned someone. So if you don't click with that person, it's tough. So I've had a few developmental editors. The first one I didn't click with, and we didn't agree on a lot of stuff. And then I was assigned someone new because I requested it, and I just adored her. But all 3 of my books would not be where they are today if it wasn't for developmental edits. I need those. As an author, I rely on that heavily. Just like Laura was saying, the pacing's off, or, sometimes they'd say, let's take the mystery from chapter 11 and put it in chapter 2. And, it just makes it better. I personally don't like doing edits because it's so painful for me. But I do it because I know that my book would not be good without that editor. So I think the smaller the press, maybe you could line up with an editor or request an editor that maybe you have some chemistry with, but the bigger the publisher, you're just assigned someone, and it's tough.
Yeah. Kim, since your new book is kind of a memoir and obviously personal, you had an outside editor, I assume, and what was your experience with getting those developmental edits back?
I have a developmental editor who I've worked with on several of my books. We work together on a freelance contract basis, and I adore her and would not survive without her. And, and I think developmental editing is often considered a fiction applied to fiction, but I think it's equally important with nonfiction. I think nonfiction should read like fiction, memoir especially. And so I look forward to her edits because I've worked with her and I trust her, we connect. So yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, dang it, I have some more work to do. Mm-hmm. But it's usually work that needs to be done. So.
Yeah. So Tamara, let's talk to you about this kind of the editing process. What do you do with your self-published authors? Have they usually done editing outside of working with you, or do you have people you recommend to them? How do they vet an editor?
Well, self-publishing is basically a DIY project. It's not any more special than any other DIY project. Like, there are things that you can do yourself, or you can hire somebody else, and either one, but it's like sprinklers in my backyard. If you look up online, how do I install sprinklers in my backyard? You get a ton of people saying, just do it yourself. You can dig the trenches. You can learn how to do the pipes. You can learn how to do the electricity. You can learn all the specialized skills and do the labor of like spending days in the hot sun digging the trenches, or you can pay somebody else to do it. Like, either one is a valid choice depending on your situation. So I always tell people, hire out if you can afford it, but it's not going to be cheap, and do not cheap out on it. Don't, because somebody says that they can do a developmental and copy edit of your entire manuscript for $300 and that's a good deal. No, no, because think of the time that it spent you to write that book. And then it's going to take somebody like to read every single word and do it so carefully. It's going to take hours and hours and hours, and it's not their full-time job. And they probably have to pay for health insurance and all this. You have to pay people good money to do good work. So it's an investment. And on my page, I don't recommend specific people, but on my lessons, which I have openly licensed, I do recommend Kim's company as a potential reach out, ask for a quote for services. Bright Light Graphics is another one that's in Bend. They do really beautiful covers. Yeah. Like, I don't know anything about their other services, but I'm like, look at these covers. At least hire this person for the covers.
Yeah, so that's Leva Moss, and she's a Writers Guild member. And I don't know about the editing, but she basically, from like cover through to getting it on Amazon and, interior, and she's amazing. Her covers are beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I like your analogy of the trenches. And I think that's what a lot of authors don't realize with editing on any level is, you want your editor to do that down and dirty work, and not to hurt your feelings, but they got to rip it up sometimes. So we have a question from Christine. Can you recommend a book or template on how to write a query letter? Does anyone have something like that? Nicole?
Well, I can recommend some online resources. So janefriedman.com, she's amazing. She does some really good templates. And then back in the day, I used writersdigest.com and literally was just like fill in the blank and just make it yours. So I'm sure someone else has a recommendation too.
Yeah. Kim, do you have advice about a query letter?
I second what Nicole said. Those are great, both great resources.
Yeah. Laura, what about you?
Those sound great to me also. I really like usually an introduction about why you're writing to this agent or editor, preferably with a mention of a work or an author that person represents or publishes. And then, very loosely, then your query synopsis about what your book's about, and then a bio that includes, like I said, why you've written that book. I'll also drop in the chat a good nonfiction proposal guideline it's the one that whenever anybody asks me for a nonfiction proposal for, like, usually memoirs don't need them, but other types of nonfiction do. And I'll put that in because it's from an agent friend of mine. And there are also some good videos there if you want to learn more about the whys behind the query letter.
Yeah, you kind of have to think about it like a cover letter. You know, you have to change it for every job, you know, specialize it to the publisher you're reaching out to. I just put some info in the chat for anyone for some information about how to also find editors. There's the Northwest Editors Guild, which is based out of Seattle, that covers the entire Pacific Northwest, including Canada. Or ACES, which used to be just for copy editors, but they've opened it up. And ACES is really great. And a lot of these ones, like the Northwest Editors Guild, they do vet their editors. You're required to submit a resume before you're in there. Let's see here. So Christine has a question about the Central Oregon Writers Guild, and I can actually answer this. Are there any critique groups? So Christine, there actually is a Facebook group that is connected to the Central Oregon Writers Guild Facebook business page that is kind of open so that you can go in and say what you write, like what genre, you know, are you looking for a group that's maybe looking for a member, or do you want to start a brand new one? And you can kind of put that out there. Mike has put our website in the chat for information on critique groups. And I think everyone on the panel would agree that critique groups are necessary. You have to have that to get to probably the next level for pitching your book. Let's see here. So I do know that we had one question where people just wanted to know maybe a book recommendation that you had. And Laura showed us what she's reading right now. So Nicole, what are you reading right now?
So I just was given a book because I was traveling, and it's called The Last Flight. So I don't know if I can recommend it yet because I just started it. I'm trying to think, oh my gosh, hurry, what was the last book I loved? I come back to me. Now I'm drawing a blank. It's like I have 1,000 books on my bedstand, and what are they?
Tamara, what are you reading right now?
Well, first I want to say the last book I absolutely loved was The Vanishing Half.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it up on a whim off the hot reads at the library when I went in to pick up some holds, and it is the most excellent book I have read so far this year. So put that on your list if it's not already there. I'm currently reading, well, I just, like after The Vanishing Half, I finished Dial A for Aunties, and that one's more fun. It was just released. It's I thought it would be a cozy mystery, but it's actually like a comedic thriller.
Okay.
Kind of pretty unrealistic, but sometimes you just want your escapism. I'm currently reading, I left it in the other room, so I might not get the title exactly right, but Writing in the Real World. And it's, deconstructing how we've been doing writing workshops over the many decades that have been very like white male focused and like opening up to the global cultures that we have now. It's pretty dense. I can't read a whole lot of it at a time because it makes my head hurt, but that's because there's a lot of good information and it just takes a while for it to sink in before I can absorb more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, what are you reading right now?
I'm going to instead say the last book that blew my mind was The Overstory.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I can't love that book enough. And the other author that I always buy in hardback and never miss is Tana French, the mystery writer from Ireland. I adore mystery and she is masterful.
So Nicole says that it was This Tender Land by Kent Kruger. And I know that one has been selling well. I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue for one of our book clubs at Roundabout Books and fell into a deep depression afterwards because it was so good. I felt like I couldn't read anything else. So I got book depressed for a little while. So if we don't have any more questions, because you ladies have answered them so masterfully, I just want to remind everyone about book depressed about Kim's workshop on Saturday and Tamara's workshop on Saturday, and to check out the Central Oregon Writers Guild website for all of their offerings. And also, because I'm going to plug it, check out Roundabout Books, because we have some amazing book clubs and book events coming up. And I love my bookstore. That's it.
Thank you so much, Julie, for running this, and Laura, Kim, Nicole, and Tamara for coming. And Kim, I apologize for pronouncing your last name wrong, which I've done for years. At least I didn't pronounce the other one wrong, right? I didn't call you Copper,
Right.
which I've done, which I've got most of my life, right? I don't know where people get the extra P, but so thank you all very much. And as Julie said, if you want to have a super literary day, go to Tamara's workshop in the morning, Kim's in the afternoon, and then we have a writing salon in the evening. So, you know, keep a bottle of scotch on hand and join us, right? That's it for us. Again, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Paige. Paige, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yes, thanks everyone for attending tonight. This was a really, really wonderful publishing panel by some of our amazing community members, and we really couldn't do it without you. So thank you for our panelists. And of course, plugging, the library has many of these books that we talked about tonight. So check those out and check us out. We have a really cool workshop coming up on Thursday, a nature journals workshop, and we will be drawing, combining nature writing and also doodling and sketching. And that is a really amazing workshop. We still have seats, so check that out online at chootslibrary.org. Also go to our YouTube page and see all of our wonderful, fun, free content. It's up there just for you. So thanks, everyone. I think that'll wrap it up.